today we are here at Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we got helicopters now, official helicopters. We had some before, but now we have official helicopters. And look at this, everybody's just buzzing all over the place. I'm in New York right now. New York City. I'm in New York City. I'm gonna just come into the cockpit here, so it's things are a little bit quieter. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos, just basics of helicopters, how they work. Right now we're in the Bell 407. Today we're just going to really dumb it down to a very beginner level, and this is going to be episode 1 of a whole series we're going to do on just helicopter basics, right? We're going to talk about the main flight controls, all the dials and gizmos and everything inside the helicopter, how generally a helicopter is laid out as far as the cockpit goes, and we'll talk about some aerodynamics and how the helicopter actually flies through the air and how it generates lift and so on and so forth. So let's just dive right in. We are in the cockpit, sitting on the right seat. So you might notice that you always default start on the left seat in airplanes in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and on helicopter you start on the right, because generally the pilot command will sit on the right. So you'll see all the main instruments right here are kind of generally oriented for the pilot on the right side, but we do have room for somebody else over there. So you may also notice that I've got an extra camera going today for my pedals down here. This was a suggestion of somebody who commented on one of my previous videos, and you might be asking yourself, Snack Pack, are you wearing US Army socks with Nike flip-flops? And the answer is yes. And what are you going to do about it?
You will do nothing because you can do nothing.
Alright, so let's start things off here. We're in the cockpit, and let's just take a little gander around. So first, we've got our primary flight controls. So first is my cyclic, alright? And I've got plenty of criticism over my crappy cyclic that I use here, my Logitech Extreme, whatever the heck it's called, but it's working for me. And if any of the flight control manufacturers want to send me some new stuff to try out, I'd be happy to try it out and do a review for you guys. But till then, I'm just going to kind of play around with my my little Logitech garbage joystick that I've had for 15 years. So yeah, somebody's definitely flying over us right now. Oh yeah. I don't know what's wrong with his rotor system, but it appears to be static. All right, moving right along. So the cyclic, this provides fore, aft, and lateral control, right, of the helicopter. So literally, if I pick up, I move the cyclic forward, I'm going forward. Pull it aft, I'm going aft. Yes, helicopters can fly backwards, and then we can slide from side to side, right? No forward motion is necessary for a helicopter like it is in an airplane, right? Because we don't need forward motion to generate lift. We're already generating lift. And in essence, our wings, which are the rotor blades, always have forward motion going there. So the next thing, most important thing, I think, is the collective, and that's this guy right here. So there's a bunch of buttons on here, mainly for lights and the starter switch and whatnot, but this is the uppy-downy stick. This does several things. First thing it's going to do is it's going to increase the pitch on all of the rotor blades, all right? So as we increase pitch on an airfoil, which is basically just a wing, and in this case, it's just our rotor blades, right? The rotor blades are the wings for a helicopter. So as you increase the pitch, what you're going to do is increase lift. But what also happens is you increase drag. So if you were to stick your hand out the window and you're going, let's say, 40 miles per hour, and you create a little bit of lift in your hand, you're going to feel your hand pushing up and back, right? So lift and drag. And you need muscle to overcome that, right? You need to use your muscles to make sure your hand doesn't fly back to the back of the window. And if you go 120 miles per hour and you try the same thing, it's going to be much more difficult. You're going to need much more muscle to hold your hand there. So the collective also tells the engines that, hey, you need to work harder. We are increasing the lift, but we're also increasing the drag. So in order for us to not drag the rotor down, we have to give it more power, right? More power has to go to the main rotor system. All right, and then last we have these pedals here. And here's where my Army socks and Nike flip-flops are really going to shine. So right pedal, left pedal. So this controls the yaw of the helicopter, right? If I push right pedal, I'm going to yaw to the right, and thus yaw to the left with the left pedal, right? So I can actually just spin around in circles as long as I want. Just try not to get too dizzy. All right, so then generally speaking, the rest of the helicopter we have our instrument panel right here. Let's just give a quick little gander here. Off to the left, these are just engine systems and transmission systems, right? So you might look at engine and you have engine oil temperature, engine oil pressure, transmission oil temperature and pressure, right? I've got fuel and I've got fuel pressure. All right, this looks like just to be my volts and a little clock. Here's my torque gauge. This is very important for helicopters, the torque gauge. MGT, this is just how hot the engines are getting. And then NG is the power section of the engine, right? But the engine is also spinning what we would call the engine RPM, right? So you see here it says percent RPM or NP. So if you look real close to this little dial right here, I would argue that this is probably the most important dial on this whole instrument display system. Because it looks like there's just this one needle, there's actually two needles, all right? So there's one that says R, that's for rotor, all right? And then this other needle is for your engine RPM. Now right now they are both at 100%, all right? That's good. It doesn't say 100%, you got problems, all right? They both should be at 100%, and you'll see in certain situations these will split off from each other, and that means something is probably wrong, and we'll talk about those in future videos, all right? So down here I've got some nav display system, little nav instruments. Here's my airspeed indicator, my attitude indicator, altimeter, and then my vertical speed indicator, and then my HSI, or my compass with course deviation indicator and all that. And then I got my trim, all right, my turn coordinator right here, right? This tells me if I'm out of trim, my little trim ball. Just a lot of this stuff is the same as on an airplane, right? But we just have additional instruments on a helicopter that are very important for sustaining flight, all right? Moving down here, we got Garmin for navigation. And then we have a radio stack, and right here it looks to be a, can't really see it, yeah, ADF. So this is the automatic direction finder that we can tune in an NDB, all right? And then finally, we have our transponder down here, all right? So our squawk code. And it looks like we have, yeah, this looks like a comm panel right here. Now, full disclosure, I've never flown a Bell 407, but I just got in the cockpit, and I mean, a lot of this stuff is very similar to other helicopters I've flown, right? Now, up at the top, you're going to see a lot more stuff. We have all these little black buttons here. Guess what? Those are just circuit breakers, all right? It looks very intimidating, but you really don't need to ever use those unless you have an issue, right? Usually the manual, operator's manual will tell you, like, hey, if you have a problem with this, maybe you should pull this circuit breaker. If you see any of these popped, that means that that component, and all these are labeled, right? Like this says for the generators, and this is for instruments, right? Caution light, taxi light, right? So the power that's coming from the generators goes through here, and if it gets overloaded or there's any kind of issue for whatever reason with that circuit, the breaker's going to pop, and then that component will no longer work, right? These are all just electrical components, right, in the circuit, respective circuit breakers that it has. All right, and then all the rest of this stuff is mostly just going to be lights, and let's see, there's probably like a, yeah, pitot heat, engine anti-ice, a lot of the same other stuff you'd find on top of the overhead panel, right? Looks like a vent blower, and you know. All right, cool. So that is the main overview of a helichopper. All right, not too bad at all. So let's take a look at the outside. And you'll notice we have this big main rotor, all right? It looks like it's spinning clockwise, but actually it's spinning counterclockwise, all right? That's the way this thing is spinning. Then we have a tail rotor back here. All right, so what are the rotors used for? So the main rotor, like we said, provides directional control, fore, aft, and lateral, and it also provides up and down control, right? So as we manipulate the cyclic, it's going to change the pitch in the rotor blades in certain points around its cycle. It's going to change. It's actually going to change, all right? But the collective raises all the blades together, right? That means we want equal lift in all portions of the rotor disc because we want to go higher, versus one part of the disc, we increase or decrease the pitch, it's going to cause the helicopter to tilt left or right, right? Slide to the left, slide to the right, and then we'll go forward or aft, right? However, whatever we want it to do. But there's a big problem that happens. So Isaac Newton had some laws of motion that are still applicable to this day. The third one, I believe it's the third one, is that for every action there's equal and opposite reaction. So what that means is that when this rotor disc is spinning, counterclockwise, it's producing a lot of power and a lot of torque on the rest of the helicopter, right? The rest of the helicopter wants to spin in the opposite direction, right? And it will if you don't stop it. So that is why we have the tail rotor, all right? And a lot of people think that this is just a big fan right here. Okay, we got another guy with a static rotor system. So a lot of people think this is just a big fan, and as we speed up, as we speed the fan up, we're going to take off, right? That is not the case, all right? It spins at the same speed all the time, all right? Hopefully it does. If it doesn't, we might have a problem. There's some things that could, you know, that would kind of be an emergency situation if it wasn't. But hopefully, if everything's working correctly, the rotor's going to be spinning at the same speed. Like we said, the only difference is that we increase the pitch on the blades and we start to take off, and then we need more power behind that, right, to compensate for the drag on the rotor system. So the tail rotor is also connected to the transmission here, all right, and that's also spinning at a constant rate. So in order to have that produce directional control for us in the yaw axis, we're just increasing the pitch on the tail rotor blades, and that's what the pedals do, right? That's what these pedals are doing down here. So if I go put right pedal, I'm actually going to decrease the pitch of the tail rotor blades. But if I go left pedal, I'm increasing the pitch, all right? So check this out. So this is something new called CTD, I believe, or CFD. I can't even remember. I don't even know what it stands for. But it's a pretty cool feature of Microsoft Flight Simulator that lets us see the airflow in real time around the helicopter, right? So the first thing I want you to look at right now is that coming off this tail rotor, there's a bunch of thrust going in that direction. If I increase pitch on the tail rotor, you'll see the vector changes a little bit, right? Yeah, let's not even worry about the collective. So I'm pushing right pedal versus left pedal. Left pedal produces a bunch more thrust in that left direction here. So now when I apply collective, you're going to see some other cool stuff happen. Now I have this downward flow of air. Remember, that downward flow of air is not what's letting the helicopter fly. It's not. What's letting the helicopter fly is increasing pitch on the rotor blades. And there's a difference between static and dynamic pressure on the top and bottom of that rotor blade that's generating lift for us. But there's also a bunch of air going through this because it is also sort of like a giant fan, right? For all intents and purposes, it's a giant fan on top, and it is blowing air down. So as I continue to increase the collective, the air is going to come straight through the rotor disc and come down. That downward flow of air through the rotor disc is something we call induced flow. And you can see that there's these vortexes or vortices generating all around the rotor disc. Well, those are interrupting the lifting portion of that part of the rotor blade, which is kind of bad. So you see as I lift collective, it gets a little more intense, the air continues to flow down, and now we're going to bring it up to a hover. I have the assists on right now because I don't want to crash from this angle. I think I can do a pretty good job flying. So right now you see all the air coming off of the rotor disc. It's getting interrupted by the ground, right? That is decreasing the velocity of induced flow. The faster that induced flow comes through the rotor disc, and we are going to need more and more power, more collective, and a higher angle of incidence is what we call that, right? More blade pitch in order to overcome it. All right, so as I come up, I'm in ground effect, and you can see the induced flow velocity is not as fast, so I don't need as much blade pitch in order to hover, right? But as I really increase my collective here and I come out of ground effect, now look at this. Now you can see that downward flow of air, that induced flow, there's nothing interrupting it. So now the velocity of the induced flow is increasing greatly. And it's creating greater rotor tip vortices, all right? And because of that, we need a higher blade pitch to hover out of ground effect than we do in ground effect. Simply put, if you want to hover in ground effect, you don't need as much collective. And if you want to hover out of ground effect like we're doing now, you need much more collective. But everybody who's trying helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator for the first time, if you're a newbie to helicopters, you're probably wondering, why is it that when I pull up on the collective, I try to take off, the helicopter starts spinning to the right? Okay, well that's just like we were talking about earlier. It's that Newton's third law of motion, right? It's spinning the whole helicopter, so that's why you need a little bit of left pedal in here when you try to take off, right? But what's going to happen now is you're going to see I'm flying to the right over here. I didn't put any right cyclic in. I'm just flying to the right. Let me get back on my pad over here. So I didn't put any right cyclic in. I just started flying to the right. Well, like we said, when we're outside, as we take off, I'll apply collective, and then I'll apply a little left pedal, and you're going to see the thrust coming off of this tail rotor is going to start shooting really far out to the side here. See, if I don't add left pedal, we're just spinning, but now I add left pedal, now we have that thrust coming out our left side, and that's pushing the whole helicopter to the right. And that is something called translating tendency. So whenever you want to take off in a helicopter, you're going to need a little left pedal and a little left cyclic. And then we can just try to hover. And this is the most fun thing to watch new pilots try to do, is try to hover a helicopter. And if I was in VR, I think I could do this a little bit better. I'm going to try to come over to the pad over here. But the main thing people do when they're trying to hover and they can't hold a hover at one spot, the main reason is because they're just over controlling. So you might find yourself making all these rapid movements, right? Try not to do that. Look, I just lost some rotor. But try not to do that, right? If you're trying to hold a hover, just do your best. And I haven't practiced with this helicopter very much, so I'm admittedly not a boss at it. Plus I have this crappy cyclic everybody keeps telling me about. But the key is just not to over control, right? If the helicopter is drifting a little bit, just let it drift. Let it drift. Don't make any abrupt movements, right? So I'm going to continue applying collective. Now the great thing about the tail rotor issue, we know we have this issue where I need left pedal in order to take off. Well, once I gain some airspeed, I'm not going to need that anymore, because these little fins on the back, they're going to pretty much keep me straight once I get some airspeed. So now I don't have that same left pedal in. So you can see I take my feet off the pedals. I'm doing pretty good maintaining forward flight over here. So again, I've got forward cyclic in here. I set the collective to just whatever power setting I want, right? If I want to climb, then I'm going to need more collective. But if I want to go faster, I'm also going to need more collective. So I have to trade off forward and aft cyclic and collective to maintain airspeed and altitude. All right, and then a left turn, I'm just going to start turning to the left. A little bit of left cyclic, I'm in a left bank now. And if you'll notice, my little trim ball is kind of going in and out there. So I have to coordinate this turn, right? Look how far that trim ball is out to the side. Did you see that? So if I put left pedal, I want to step on that pedal. I want to step on the ball. Always put pedal in the direct, wherever the side the ball is on, you want to step on it. So a little left pedal will try to keep me in trim. Let's try to the right now. Now I got to coordinate this turn. Looks like I need left pedal. Oh. And it's pretty sensitive, but you just want to try to keep it right in the center, right? Whatever side the ball is on, just apply pedal in that direction just a little bit, and that'll coordinate your turn, right? All right, so let's go check out Lady Liberty over here. I'm going to pull in a good amount of torque. Try to get some airspeed. And again, I don't really need to do anything with my pedals right now, because the fairings on the back are keeping me stable. Not sure what they're called on a Bell 407. If anybody's a pro in the Bell 407, let me know. I know on a Blackhawk, we have a cambered fairing and a stabulator on the back. But this one has some similar little gadgets on the back. I'm just not sure what they call it for this model. Maybe a stabilizer? I don't know. All right, so we're going to come shoot an approach over here. I'm going to just drop out a good bit of collective, and then I'm going to put a little bit of nose up in here. I'm pull back on the cyclic just a hair, and I want like just a couple degrees nose up. That's going to slow me down, and I'm going to start descending. Now I'm going to need to continuously add collective the whole way down, all the way down. I'm going to need to add collective. I need way more power to hover than I need to fly in forward flight. Hey, look, we got some more helicopter buddies over here. All right, I'm going to continue coming down. As I add torque, I need to add left pedal, right, just like before. Continuing to add torque, and gently touch her down right here. I lost my connection, I don't know why. Okay, this is great. Alright, well, that sucked. I don't know why I just lost my connection, but it is what it is. So at the very end, I would have touched down nice and soft if I didn't lose control of my flight controls from that little caution message. Alright. Beautiful. And then here's a really great exercise. Go find yourself something like the Statue of Liberty or something that's fun to look at, maybe a big tower, a tower in Tokyo City. Tokyo Tower's pretty cool. So then I'm going to slide right, and I want to try to maintain my altitude right here. So I'm like at her eye level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm at her eye level, and I'm just going to try to fly around in a circle. So I got to use my pedals to keep my heading straight. I'm using collective to maintain my level, eye level with her, right, my altitude. And then I'm using the cyclic to give me some right, like a right, basically a right sliding motion. Just kind of circling around. Little things like this really help you to build your control touch. Very nice. And there's beautiful New York City. All right, so what did we talk about today? We talked about the basic layout, the inside of the helicopter, and we talked about basically what the rotors do, how to control them. A little bit about ground effect and how that affects airflow, focusing on induced flow, which is one of the most important things to understand when you're trying to understand aerodynamics of a helicopter, right? And then we just did a little takeoff and an approach over to Lady Liberty over here. All right, we're going to have a lot more coming out. This is going to be a series, and we're going to get into some more complicated discussions later on, and we're going to get to see how the airflow changes in real time, thanks to Microsoft for doing this awesome job of allowing us to visualize that airflow. It's kind of like I've never really seen anything else be able to do that before, so this is a really cool opportunity to kind of visualize that. So, all right, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Lots more coming. All right, Snack back out.